I humiliated my friend because he was guided by his IQ. So I have a friend, let's call him Brian, who won't shut up about his IQ. Ever since he took some online test that said he got a 131, he's been acting like he's the second coming of Einstein. At first, it was just kinda annoying. He'd drop random fun facts about how high IQ people process information differently. He started using words like erudite and obfuscate in normal conversations. But then it got worse. He started low-key insulting us. He told our friend Emily, who's in med school, that doctors are just good at memorization, not real intelligence. He told me I was wasting potential because I work in marketing instead of something more intellectually rigorous. Dude works in IT at a help desk. Anyway, last week we were at a party and he started talking about IQ again. Someone jokingly asked, "If you're so smart, why aren't you rich?" And Brian, completely serious, goes, "Well, intelligence isn't always about wealth. It's about how you process the world. Low IQ people can never truly grasp how limiting their perception is." So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Damn bro, that's crazy. What's it like having a high IQ and still losing at fantasy football every year?" The room exploded. Brian turned red, mumbled something about variance and sample sizes, and left the party early. Now he's barely texting in the group chat, and a mutual friend told me I embarrassed him too much. And now, naturally, half the group has been testing their IQs just to mess with him. Someone dropped this 10-minute Cerebrum IQ test in the chat, and it's become a full-blown competition. If Brian was really a genius, you'd think he'd take it again and prove us all wrong. But nah, suddenly he's not a fan of online tests anymore. A few days passed, and Brian started acting weird. He wasn't just sulking or avoiding us, he was legitimately different. He stopped bringing up IQ altogether, which was suspicious enough, but he also started showing up late to our usual hangouts, distracted and jumpy. One time, we caught him looking over his shoulder, like he was waiting for someone to call his name. Then, the really weird part happened. Our buddy Jake, who was one of the first to take the Cerebrum test just to mock Brian, suddenly ghosted us. One day he was in the group chat roasting Brian like the rest of us, and the next, gone. No replies, no posts, no updates, just radio silence. His Instagram and Twitter were still up, but he hadn't posted anything. We figured maybe he was just busy or bored of the whole thing, but then Brian did the most un-Brian thing ever. He asked if we'd heard from Jake. This is the same Brian who would normally be smug about a friend disappearing after making fun of him. Instead, he looked genuinely freaked out. He kept checking his phone and muttering about how Jake was supposed to meet him for lunch and never showed. When we asked what they were meeting up for, Brian got all cagey, saying it was personal. It got even weirder when two more friends who had taken the Cerebrum test also stopped responding to messages. They weren't ghosting us exactly, their numbers were suddenly not in service. One of them, Dave, had an active TikTok account, and his last video was just unsettling. It was a 6-second clip of him sitting in his car, eyes darting around, whispering something that sounded like, "I shouldn't have taken it." Then the video cut out. We tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. Brian was spiraling at this point. He started digging into the Cerebrum test, trying to find out who made it, how it worked, what it actually did. When we asked why he cared so much, he just said, "I don't think it was just an IQ test." Then he showed us his search history. Every single person who had taken the test, not just in our group, but across various Reddit threads and small forums, had either gone dark or started acting strange. Some of them had posted cryptic messages before vanishing. Things like, "It sees me now, and the numbers aren't numbers." One guy wrote, "I opened the door," and then his account was deleted the next day. At first, we thought Brian was just trying to mess with us, get back at us for making fun of him. But the more we looked, the worse it got. The Cerebrum test wasn't even traceable anymore. The link was dead. The website was gone. We tried Googling it, but all we found were sketchy archive pages that led nowhere. It was like it had never existed. That night, we got a message in the group chat. It was from Jake's number. Just 2 words. "Don't look." Then his number went out of service. Brian hasn't spoken to any of us since. His apartment is empty. His phone is disconnected. The last thing we saw from him was an email sent to all of us with just one attachment, a screenshot of his unfinished cerebrum test. There was only one question left unanswered. Do you want to see? We didn't know what to do after Brian disappeared. For the first few days, we told ourselves he was just hiding out somewhere, maybe trying to scare us. But as time passed and his phone stayed dead, his apartment remained empty, and his bank account showed no activity, reality set in. Jake, Dave, now Brian, all gone. And the one common denominator? The cerebrum test. At first, the rest of us made a pact not to talk about it anymore. We figured if we ignored it, maybe it would go away. We stopped mentioning Brian's name. We avoided the group chat, let the threads go cold. But then one night, Emily called me, her voice shaking. I think someone's watching my apartment. She lived on the third floor of a gated complex, not exactly the kind of place where random people lurked around. But when I pressed her for details, she couldn't explain it. Just that she felt eyes on her every time she walked to her car, that her curtains shifted when no windows were open, that her phone screen would light up at odd hours, showing notifications that disappeared when she checked them. Then, 3 days later, she was gone too. No notes, no texts, just gone. Panic set in. We were running out of friends. I decided to do something I had sworn I wouldn't. I tried to take the cerebrum test. I had to dig through internet archives just to find a trace of it. Every link I clicked was a dead end. Every reference to the test was scrubbed clean. But then, buried deep in an obscure forum post, I found a mirror link. My hands were shaking as I clicked on it. The test loaded instantly. There were no fancy graphics, no branding, just a plain white screen with a single sentence. Let's see how you process the world. Then the first question appeared. At first, they were normal enough. Basic pattern recognition, logic puzzles, memory recall. But the further I went, the stranger they became. One question showed me a photo of a crowded subway station and asked, which of these people is already gone? Another showed a series of symbols that made my head hurt just looking at them. One simply read, when did you start seeing the Watchers? I tried to stop. I really did. But when I clicked the exit button, nothing happened. The screen flashed and a new question appeared. Do you want to see? My stomach dropped. That was the same question in Brian's unfinished test. I didn't answer. I slammed my laptop shut, ripped the battery out, and threw it across the room. I sat there for a long time, heart pounding, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Not until my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. You saw enough. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the test questions looping in my head. I felt like something had taken root inside my mind, something that wasn't there before. Then, the disappearances started making the news. First, it was a few missing persons reports, buried in local news segments. But then, the numbers started to grow. Dozens, then hundreds. People all over the country vanishing without a trace. The only connection? They had all searched for the same thing online. Cerebrum IQ test. By the time the authorities caught on, it was too late. The site was already gone again, wiped from existence. But the damage was done. Whatever the test was, whatever it had started, it was spreading. And then, one night, Jake came back. It started with a knock at my door at 3 a.m. I almost didn't answer, but something made me get up. When I looked through the peephole, I saw him standing there, pale, shaking. His clothes were torn like he had been running for days. I opened the door. He stepped inside, locked it behind him, and whispered, "They know we're looking." Before I could even process what he said, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another message. It's too late. I looked up at Jake. His eyes weren't focused. He wasn't really looking at me, but through me like he was somewhere else. And then, just as suddenly as he arrived, he collapsed. His phone fell out of his pocket, screen still lit up. It showed a single word. Run! Jake didn't wake up for hours. I sat there, heart pounding, watching him breathe, unsure of what to do. My mind was racing with questions, but the only thing I knew for certain was that something was seriously wrong. I checked my phone again. The message, "It's too late," was still there, staring back at me. The sender's number had already disappeared. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't know who to text. The police? No way. What would I even say? That my missing friend just reappeared, mumbling cryptic warnings before passing out. They'd write me off as crazy. So I waited. When Jake finally stirred, he didn't react the way I expected. No panic, no relief, just this strange, distant expression, like he wasn't fully here. "Jake?" I whispered. His eyes snapped to mine, and for a second, there was something in them I didn't recognize. Fear? No, something deeper, something worse. "They're inside," he muttered. A chill ran down my spine. Inside what? His hands clenched. Me. I swallowed hard. "Jake, what happened to you? Where have you been?" He shuddered, gripping his arms like he was holding himself together. "I don't know." His breath hitched. "I took the test." I already knew that, but hearing him say it, hearing the way his voice cracked, it felt different. Like the words themselves had weight. He looked at me, pleading, "Did you?" I hesitated. I didn't finish. His face twisted. "Good." He sat up too fast, wincing. "We have to leave." I frowned. "Leave and go where?" Jake's eyes darted around my apartment, like he expected something to be hiding in the corners. "Anywhere, but here." Then, as if to confirm his paranoia, my phone vibrated again. Another unknown number. He was never yours to find. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. Jake grabbed my wrist before I could react. His grip was ice cold. "Don't answer. Don't react." I didn't, but my mind was spinning. He was never yours to find. What did that even mean? Were they talking about Jake? About Brian? Jake tugged me toward the door. "We have to move." No, I didn't argue. I grabbed my keys and followed him outside. The air was thick, heavy, like the night itself was pressing down on us. My car was parked a block away. As we hurried down the street, I stole a glance at Jake. He was scanning the shadows like he expected something to lunge at us. "What are we running from?" I finally asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he froze mid-step. "Wait." I stopped too. "What?" Then I saw it. A car was parked at the end of the street. No headlights, no movement, just sitting there, facing us. Jake inhaled sharply. "They found me." I grabbed his arm. "Who? Who's in the car?" His eyes darted to mine, full of an urgency that made my blood run cold. "Not who. What?" Before I could respond, the car door opened. A man stepped out, or at least, I thought it was a man, but something was off. The way he moved, the way the streetlights didn't quite seem to touch him. Jake squeezed my wrist. "Run." We bolted. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My pulse thundered in my ears as we sprinted toward my car. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking, barely managing to unlock it before we dove inside. I turned the ignition. The engine roared to life. Headlights flooded the street as I slammed the gas, tearing away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I saw the figure standing there, watching, not chasing, not moving, just watching. Jake exhaled sharply. "They don't need to follow." I gripped the wheel. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone, an old flip phone, not the one he used to have, and typed something fast. Then he showed me the screen. A single address. "What's this?" I asked. "The only place they won't look," Jake said. I glanced at him. He was trembling, fingers twitching against his knee. Whatever had happened to him, whatever had seen, he wasn't the same Jake who left. I focused on the road. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what was waiting for us. But I did know one thing. I wasn't going to take the test. Not ever. The road stretched ahead, an empty void beneath the dim glow of the streetlights. I kept driving, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, heart hammering in my chest. Jake hadn't spoken since Head given me the address. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, fingers twitching in his lap. We were almost an hour out of town when I finally worked up the nerve to ask, "What's at this address, Jake?" His lips pressed into a thin line. Answers. Not the answer I wanted, but it was all I was going to get. As we neared the location, I realized it wasn't a house or a hideout. It was an old, abandoned research facility, the kind of place that should have been torn down years ago but still stood, defying time and decay. The windows were shattered, the walls covered in graffiti, but the sign near the gate sent a chill through me. Cerebrum Initiative. Restricted access. Jake inhaled sharply. This is where it started. I turned off the car and faced him. "Jake, what the hell is going on? What did the test do to you?" His fingers twitched again. It wasn't a test. Not really. It was a door. My stomach dropped. A door to what? Jake turned to me. and for the first time, I saw real terror in his eyes. To them, a movement in the shadows cut our conversation short. Someone or something was watching us. My pulse spiked as I reached for the door handle. "Wait," Jake whispered. "They know we're here." A figure stepped out from behind the fence. It was the same kind of unnatural presence I had seen back in the city, the kind that moved wrong, that absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. Jake tensed. "We can't let them take us." I swallowed my fear. "Then we end this." He nodded, and together we ran. The facility's entrance was rusted shut, but Jake pried it open with a crowbar head grabbed from my trunk. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and the scent of something rotten. We moved through the hallways, following the eerie glow of flickering overhead lights. The deeper we went, the more I felt the wrongness pressing against my skull. Then we found it. A single room, still powered. In its center, a chair, and in front of it, a terminal with the Cerebrum logo. The screen displayed a single question. "Would you like to proceed?" Jake's breath hitched. "This is it. This is where they pull you in." I clenched my fists. Then we shut it down. I grabbed the chair and hurled it at the monitor. The glass shattered, sparks flying, but the screen flickered and remained on. A hum began to vibrate through the room, growing in intensity. The walls seemed to pulse. The shadows deepened. "They won't let us," Jake whispered. "They need more." I grabbed his arm. "We have to overload it. If this place is still running, there's got to be a power source." We searched frantically, finding a breaker panel buried under layers of dust and debris. Jake yanked it open. "If we cut the main line, no more test. No more of them." I finished. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the lever and pulled. The building groaned. The hum turned into a scream. The lights burst, plunging us into darkness. Something shrieked in the distance, an inhuman wail that made my bones vibrate. Then, silence! I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Jake spoke. "Did we do it?" I flicked on my phone's flashlight. The screen was dead. The room was just a room again. No flickering monitor, no pulsing walls. The facility had truly gone dark. We stumbled outside. The figures were gone. The street was empty. The sky looked normal again. Jake let out a shaky breath. "It's over." And somehow, I knew he was right. We drove back to town in silence, the weight of what had happened pressing down on us. There was no celebration, no relief, just exhaustion. Days passed, then weeks, and nothing happened. The disappearances stopped. No more cryptic messages. The Cerebrum test was wiped from existence, like it had never been there at all. Jake left town. I don't blame him. As for me, I tried to go back to normal, to pretend it had all been some nightmare. But sometimes, late at night, I catch myself staring at my blank phone screen, expecting a message, a question. "Would you like to proceed?" I never answer, and I never will.